The defacing of the Denver Police Memorial last weekend by protesters set off a very public battle between the police chief and rank-and-file officers. The Denver Police Protective Association has called for Chief White's resignation over the policy of not interfering with protesters even as they were about to deface the memorial. Alicia, this has been news throughout the week, and it's come down to that policy of not interfering. And it seems that, at least before this time, that policy has been very helpful. When you've seen police in other cities get involved, there's been other problems. But this was a turning point. Can the Police Protective Association sway, I guess, the powers that be and do some harm to Chief White's status?
I hope not. I thought it was a very rational approach, a really a differential response to a situation. Now, I'm sure if someone were to be harmed or someone's life was in danger, there was violence, the cops would have reacted immediately. But this was what looked to me like latex paint. I saw them wash it off with a hose later. It's disrespectful and it's wrong to vandalize that monument, but I think it could have turned out quite a bit worse if the cops had, gotten very tough. There could be, pushing and shoving. Could be worse. I mean, somebody could have gotten their hand on a gun, or it just could have gone very badly. In this situation, people were arrested immediately afterward, and the people who were there to protest had the opportunity to have their say. So I hope Chief White doesn't change course on this.
David, it seemed that, like Alicia mentioned, it all turned out okay. And for me, at least, watching it, before the Police Protective Association came out and announced that this was terrible about Chief White, that the police would almost have a positive PR situation where people are saying, yeah, gosh, the protest was this. People, I think the normal folks are watching and saying that was despicable. But then as soon as you say, no, that should have been protected and make it an issue, you lose that positive momentum. How much role does the police union have in the public portrayal of what's going on here?
Well, of course, they're trying to play a major role. I would give credit to the mother of Jesse Hernandez, who was the subject of the protest, because she said she opposed the criminals who defaced the memorial for actually courageous police, very courageous, heroic police officers who gave their lives protecting other people and taking on violent criminals, as Vincent Carroll pointed out in a great column in the Post this week. Anytime you have stuff, big events going on in the street, it's not uncommon that to the core of people who are there to make a point about some issue, that on the fringes of that, you get thugs and criminals who come along. You saw that in Ferguson, where there were lots of people who were protesting an issue, and there were also criminal gangsters from St. Louis and other places who came into the town to loot and riot and steal. Same kind of thing for these two scumbags who defaced the police memorial. One of them has a record of assaulting a police officer before. I don't want to second guess Chief White for dealing with a tactical situation as it was going on, but I think in general, you do have to draw the line and say, yeah, go out and have protests on whatever issue you care about, but no, you can't go and start vandalizing other people's property. What if they started breaking the windows at the police station or at anybody else's house, or obstructing traffic? That's wrong. Your right to protest doesn't include the right to harm other people by shutting down traffic, by destroying or harming property. And I think it's time for stronger leadership from the mayor to say enough is enough, protest all you want, but no crimes against other people or other people's property while you're doing the protest.
Mike, the police union seemed to double down on the whole idea by putting out a letter to the citizens of Colorado, again calling for the resignation of Chief White. So they're not about to let this go, but do you think that's going to add any pressure at the city council or the mayor level, or do you think they're pretty firm with supporting Chief White?
I think the last people they listen to is the police union. Police union it does not have a huge amount of credibility within the Denver city government, and to take on Dave's point about the police versus the protesters, I give the cops a lot of credit for restraint here, and the the worst thing, beyond a couple of hypotheticals that you mentioned, and worse beyond breaking a few windows, which we don't hope they don't, but far worse beyond that is the idea that we'll get into a cops versus protesters dynamic, which would only build up the protesters' side, as far as I can see, and make it more. And make the idea of not the protests themselves, which are worthwhile, but make the violence of any protest, or make the make it that seem more legitimate, because you have on one side. Then you have, what if the cops had gone there and wrestled these guys to the ground, pepper sprayed them, done whatever else, and overreacted, which is what cops often do when anything happens against cops. I don't say cops usually overreact, but when something happens with a cop involved, cops almost always overreact. And so I credit them for restraint. I think the last thing they want to do is be involved in a cop versus protester situation. I think usually in Colorado, we've been very good at that, and I think Chief White has basically done the right thing. And I also want to second what you said about Vincent Carroll's column. It was a very moving column in which he took the stories of the policemen who died and women who died in the line of duty, and told how they died, and told what they were defending and what they faced, and how the vandals who spilled paint on those memorials would never understand what, in fact, these people had done for other people.
Right. Mike, I agree with your point that there's the restraint showed by the Denver police, I think, went a long way. And frankly, I guess, Natasha, as we come to you, the police union's point, I understand where they're coming from, but it's almost showing such a thin skin that if I'm one of those, not the main protesters protesting a point, but one of the thugs and the scumbags, as David put it, now I'm finding exactly how to get under somebody's skin. Yeah. The police themselves acted the right way and didn't let that go, but Denver Police Protective Association are certainly showing exactly how to irritate at least that group of people. What do you think of the whole situation?
You know, this week I had an opportunity to talk to some police officers about what they felt about this, and their emotions are raw. I mean, I think what the police union is saying is representing that, how harmful and hurtful this was to their organization. And frankly, I can't truly understand that because I'm not a police officer. I don't have to do that job. But that reaction is utterly wrong. I think what they did that day is perfectly right. It raises this question of what role does the police play in our communities? What reaction should they take? Sometimes that can go the way of a lethal reaction. We've seen that recently. But sometimes the role, and I would say more often than not, is actually peace. It's about community safety. It's about interactions with the community. This is not a moment for an eye reaction. It was a moment to be an adult in the room and say, that's not okay. We're going to prosecute you. You're going to get in a lot of trouble for this. But we're not going to engage, because I think right now, sitting at this table, if that interaction had gone differently, it would have been a very black mark on Denver's history. And instead, we can look at it as a moment for the Denver PD to start rebuilding some trust with their own community at a time where these conversations are very difficult to have. It's a huge win, regardless of the awfulness of the crime, which I think is hard to advocate for. I mean, it's awful.
Right.
But this is a chance to say, DPD, you did a good job.